Welcome to day 4 of our dozen days of December. Today, the tool that we're going to talk about is called a bodkin. Now, a bodkin comes in different shapes and forms, but I'm going to show you the one that I have, and then we'll talk a little bit about what the other ones will look like. Basically, a bodkin is a stick that has a hole on one side that will allow you to put an elastic or a drawstring in, and then it will pull it through a casing, or if you have a hole that you want to get something to go through, or a tube that you're trying to fit something through, that's when you'd want to use a bodkin. Now, my bodkin in the hole has some teeth. So those little bumps that you see there, those will grip the elastic or the drawstring and kind of hold it in. Now, not all bodkins will have that. Some bodkins will just have the hole. So what you need to do in that case is you're going to take your drawstring or elastic, you're going to put it in the hole. So now you can see my bodkin is on my drawstring. And if yours doesn't have that teeth to hold it like mine does, what you'll want to do is take that drawstring and make a loop and a knot. And that will just make sure that it stays on and it doesn't come off. Now, mine, that's all I need to do is put my drawstring or elastic in, and then I'm ready to put this into my casing. Some of them will be more like a pair of tweezers. And those ones, instead of doing it like this, you are going to tweeze and squeeze that bodkin onto the drawstring or elastic, and you pull a little piece down and it'll lock it in place, and it'll grip and hold your drawstring or elastic almost like a pair of fingers holding on nice and tightly, and that'll usually hold it in place really well. So you might have one where it has a hole that you tie or slip it into, or you might have a tweezer pair that grips it. Now, once your elastic or drawstring is attached, you can start threading it through your casing. One tip though that I have is to put something at the end, so when you're threading it through, you don't keep pulling and end up pulling this into your casing. Now, traditionally, a lot of people will use a safety pin instead of a bodkin. And the reason why we're suggesting a bodkin today is because sometimes when we're using a safety pin and we're pulling it through the casing, it'll come undone and we can likely poke ourselves with that really sharp edge. So that isn't the safest thing for kids when they're sewing. The bodkin is much safer. Now, an alternative is possibly having a diaper pin. These ones won't open because they're locked in place. They have a little special cap. So if you have a diaper pin, you can put that onto the end of your elastic or drawstring, and you can actually keep that at the end and then use your bodkin, and then that'll kind of prevent it from going in. If you don't have one of the diaper pins that's safe, you might have what we call a binder clip. Now, the binder clip can do the same thing. We can open up the binder clip, clip it onto the end of your elastic or drawstring, and that'll just work as a stopper from it going inside your casing. Now, that can slide off, so you want to be careful not to pull really hard when you're putting it through the casing, but it'll act a bit of a stopper if you're going slow. It'll prevent you from just pulling it inside. So if we look at my bag here, we can see that I have the hole for the casing. I'm going to take my bodkin, so not the end that has the elastic or drawstring on it, but the other side. I'm going to feed that into the hole, and I'm going to push it in, and I can feel that in here, I can feel where that bodkin is. and it ends right there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just keep pushing it, squeezing up my fabric, and then pulling that fabric over top of my drawstring. Now when you first get started, if you have that knot, it might take a second to get that knot fed into the hole, but then once it's in, you'll be good to go. So I'm going to push the bodkin and pull the fabric. I'm pushing the bodkin, gathering up all of that casing around it, and pulling my fabric away. And I'm going to keep doing that all the way around until my elastic or my drawstring gets right through the casing. So right now I'm using my left hand to push the fabric onto the bodkin and moving the bodkin over, and then using my right hand to pull the fabric further down the drawstring. And when I get to the end, I'm going to poke my bodkin out so we can see that my bodkin is coming out of the casing. I'm going to grip it with my fingers, and then I can then just pull the fabric up and over. Now this one's a little bit trickier because I have two drawstrings in this casing to make a drawstring closure. Cinches together. So now you can see that it's coming a lot easier, and I'm just going to keep pulling until I have about the length that I want out. Now if I was pulling this end closer, which I'll show you, we'll see that by adding that binder clip now, it's preventing me from pulling in that end. But I want a longer tail, so I'm going to pull that side further out. And then my drawstring is through the casing using my bodkin. Now that I'm done, I can just untie that, and I'm ready to go. One of our ambassadors used her bodkin to put an elastic through a pair of pajama pants that she made. Let's take a look at that. So two more tips on using the bodkin before we go. Sometimes you'll have an elastic that's round like this where it won't stay tied in a knot very well, or sometimes your casing's really small and a knot might just get stuck in the seam allowance. So in those cases, when you thread your bodkin, you just want to make sure that you have a longer end than something like this, because this might just slip off as you're pulling. You want to just pull that bodkin on really well and have a nice long end as you go and thread it through, and that'll just keep it together as it's going through the channel of the casing. Now if you are a first time really young sewist, you might have one of these kids sewing plastic needles around the house that come in different craft kits. These are also really good bodkins for tiny hands. It's not pointy on the end where it's going to hurt if you end up jabbing yourself with it. And they have a larger eye on this needle, so you can usually fit drawstrings and elastics through. So for smaller hands, these are great as well to use as a bodkin as you thread it through. You can feel the more chunkiness of this needle, and it works great for threading through casings as well. Now, hope you learned something about bodkins today, and you'll get a chance hopefully to use it on a project like maybe our under the sea bag, and just let us know how it goes and if you have any questions. Thanks for joining us again today. We'll see you tomorrow.